What the fuck is really good world? For reals though. Like, I keep taking these delayed fucking breaks from this podcast game, and I don't know why. Part of me wants to think that it's because of how busy I am with work and school, as I mentioned in the previous podcast. But real shit, a lot of it also has to do because of the sad boy life that I fucking mentioned in the previous podcast. And I'm not going to be talking too much about the sad boy life here in this particular one. Not too much, right? And I'm definitely not going to talk too much about how I'm busy, aside from the fact that, you know, PhD program and other things that I got going on the side from that is taking up a lot of time at the moment. And because of that, this particular podcast is going to be a little bit short in and of itself. I honestly wasn't even going to do it though, because of those two reasons, right? Both because of how busy I am at the current moment, but also because the sad boy life, right? Now, before we get into why that is the case, well, more specifically, I should qualify by saying that real shit, dog. The only, like, 99.9% of the reason that I'm doing it is because of the whole events that happened at the Notre Dame Cathedral this past a couple of days ago in Paris, right? And also because real shit, the sad boy life ain't it's not a 365 thing. And today is one of those days when it's gotten a little bit easier to fucking cope and deal with that kind of shit, right? But I'll talk about that here shortly how. And no, it doesn't have anything to do with the fucking Notre Dame Cathedral and fucking all that kind of shit burning down. No, that's not why I fucking feel happier today in particular, right? But before I get into that, I got to qualify every podcast by saying that if you haven't yet, please do follow me on Instagram specifically, because that is where I am posting the majority of these videos. The Facebook is a little bit active. It's a little spotty, right? The Twitter, I've basically given up on that. It's not my thing. Not yet, at least. Maybe I should start picking up on it. But for now, the primary source is Instagram. Again, it's icenice_el profe. That's how it reads out. It spells out as icenice_elprofe, right? Another thing that I'd like to do before I get into this podcast is give a quick shout out to my boy Mil Heezy, right? And specifically because although the feedback that I've gotten from, you know, those of you who have been so generous as to leave me with some feedback has been very much appreciated, I would be remiss to say that, you know, the conversations that I've been having with Millhouse have been deeply beneficial to not just my continued understanding, to the process of continuing to understand reality in a more full manner, but it's also going to deeply influence this particular podcast. And I speak specifically in regards not just to the conversation. I'm speaking directly now to Milperp, right? But also to those of you who are listening. We've had some conversations recently about God and shit, right? But it's just all the conversations in a whole. He's been the most consistent person that I've been, shooting his ideas back and forth out. So it's only right that, you know, I give him a little bit of shout out for that. And more importantly, aside from the quick shout out reason, there's an even deeper reason why I feel as though it needs to be addressed. And that's because, for those of you who don't know Millhouse, which is going to be lots of us, unfortunately, right? He's actually a very conservative person. And that world, that conversation, I just can't emphasize enough how much I value that conversation, because it is allowing me, it's a conduit. He's a conduit to a world that I understand it. I understand the thought process. I understand the reasoning, right? For the most part, but I don't live it. I don't live that world, right? And lived experience is very important in the knowledge building and the knowledge formation process. So it would be in bad faith of me to sit here and try to speak, for instance, on issues regarding the right, if I don't even understand what it's like to live in the perspective, or live through the perspective of someone who is on the right. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the biggest issues that I feel that we personally, as quote unquote lefty liberals, because we've discussed before, I ain't no fucking lefty, dog, right? But if you had to try to reduce, right, essentialize my stances, a lot of it would probably be more along the liberal camp, right? And I think it's very disingenuous. It's one of the biggest problems that we have here in 2019 America. And that is that we have people, for instance, who are either on the right or on the left who feel qualified to speak about the experiences and about the issues relating to people on the other side of the political spectrum, just by virtue of the fact that they have a fucking freedom to speech. Now, there's no question about that. You can fucking say whatever you want to say. It's America, and I may not agree with what you got to say, but I will fucking protect to the death to you to fucking say that shit, my dog, right? But what I'm trying to say is that it's also important for us who seek to gain a higher level understanding of reality that we put ourselves into the position of other people to try to understand their thought process and their reasoning as to why they are coming at us, because I feel, at least, that it helps remove us from the defensive as though we're just being attacked, right? And unfortunately, given these phenomenological predicaments that we find ourselves in, namely the fact that we are fundamentally just we're embodied, right? Our corporeal embodiment. We cannot understand what it's like to live the life of another person because of our corporeal embodiment, right? And the closest that we can get is through conversation. So when I have these conversations with people like Milhouse, right? They're fucking extremely valuable to me because again, they provide me with a little bit of a conduit, a little bit of an insight, as much as I could possibly get to the other side of this fucking quote unquote political spectrum that again, I don't live that life. I mean, I do on certain respects, like you come after my guns, dog, we're going to have some fucking problems. You know what I'm saying? Right. But aside from that, I don't really live that life, bro. So I'm not going to sit here and act in bad faith pretending that I do otherwise, because it's really easy to reduce other people's opinions and essentialize them and marginalize them to the most fucking simplistic understanding by doing so. Right. So again, just in regards to the last podcast that we had in general, right? When I was talking about fucking Jordan Peterson, for instance, Milhouse, the fucking Jordan Peterson fan, and I don't blame him, yo, because real shit, a lot of what Jordan Peterson has to say turns from the little bit of philosophy that he does understand is some pretty deep shit, right? But obviously, I have my own fundamental predicaments with what he has to say, chief among which being the fact that he's not a fucking philosopher, right? And the ways that he does apply the philosophy is very spotty and picky and choosy, okay? But that's from my own personal biases. And in having our conversation with Milhouse, I started to realize, well, there's a little bit more to the Jordan Peterson character than meets the eye. And it's unfair to reduce him to his talking points without understanding the effects that he has on the people who are actually, fans of his, which undoubtedly there are millions of, right? So, yeah. And then one last quick little thing with the whole Milhouse thing, right? Before y'all think I'm fucking sucking them off for too long, right? It's not the intention, bro. The intention is to give an honest, genuine fucking shout out to the people who are providing you with, helping provide me with the insights that we all are benefiting from, myself included, those of us who are listening to this podcast, right? And it's in regards to one of his Instagram stories that I got to say, Milhouse, that shit just brought infinite joy to my heart. One of the cool things about social media, I think, is the ability to connect to people, right? And when we're not using it to fucking talk shit about each other's moms and tell each other how fucking small our dicks are, right? Because we believe in Trump is the Messiah, or because we thought Obama was the Messiah, right? We can also use it to try to gain an insight into people that otherwise we would never have a chance to because of, life, shit happens. And especially as we start to get older, we don't have enough time to fucking sit back and, get to know people as well as potentially we could, had we had access to them on a regular basis. So one of my favorite aspects of social media is that very fact. You get to see people, at least those who are interested, as they continue along their process of becoming. I've seen it with various people on my social media, most of which being out of jujitsu, by the way. I don't think I don't think that this is a mistake or an accident, I should say. That the majority of the growth processes, the process of becoming that I've seen on my social media, has come from people that I've met through jujitsu. Now, I'm not trying to say that just because you don't do jujitsu that you're not doing the same, right? I'm just trying to say that it's a noticeable trend from the people that I do jujitsu with in regards to this whole process of becoming. There's also my boy, Salsa, for instance. I told him a quick shout out when I was admiring his book acquiring phase that he's currently going through. I thought that shit was awesome. You know what I mean? And the same here with Milhouse, right? I saw on one of his Instagram stories that he tagged it somehow with something of a Mexica or Aztec warrior, I think it was. And honestly, that shit just brought fucking joy to my heart because, well, this is what we're going to be talking about today. This is where the whole fucking Notre Dame Cathedral comes into play. And again, if we have time later, I'll talk about maybe why I'm so busy and how the sad boy life affects to all that kind of shit, right? And the answer is simple. It's this indigenization process, right? Now, again, in order to truly, truly understand why, at least for me personally, this was such a powerful rhetorical move, if you will, on Milhouse's behalf, is because you would have to know him and the process of becoming that he's engaged in over the few years that I've known him, especially through jiu-jitsu, right? And I guess in the interest of, having to forego the whole, you personally stalking this motherfucker on social media and finding out exactly what it is that I'm talking about, I'll just qualify by saying that, again, he's a very conservative person, right? And, more power to him. But in this conservatism, I had never really noticed this play, if you will, towards an identity politic. And, for whatever reason, maybe he never found them important. Whatever I don't fucking know. I don't know him like that, right? Maybe listening to this, he'll fucking give me the answer. But I had never noticed him mention anything of an identity outside of his American citizenry, right? His the identity that comes with being an American, especially a patriot, a proud American, right? So to see that subtle rhetorical move on his social media, it was very meaningful to me, man, because it you know, again, we fucking essentialize people. We like to essentialize people, and we think that just because the way they are now is the way that they're always going to be. But as this example with, that I just given you clearly demonstrates, there's this process, there's this ability for people to transcend, even the most tried and true habits that we have, the most tried and true identities that we hold dearly. Those shits are fucking possible to overcome, especially the ones that are doing us more harm than they are good, right? I'm not saying that being an American patriot or American citizen is a fucking bad thing. It's fucking great. Don't get me twisted at all, right? But I am saying that there are people who fucking latch onto this identity. And I'm not accusing Milhouse of this, right? I'm accusing the fucking, the vast majority of people that we see on, TV or social media who are fucking love it or leave it, bro. This is fucking America. Speak English or die, fucking asshole. Right? I'm talking about those shitheads, right? Even they, man, if they are fucking committed to the process of becoming a better understanding of reality, even they are capable of fucking advancing and becoming something that even, none of us would possibly ever imagine was capable of an individual like that. And again, this is just part and parcel of going back to the whole importance of conversing with people and why we should not fucking seek to shut people down, if you will. Now, I'm not fucking, please fucking believe me when I say that I'm not sitting here trying to fucking pontificate, right? I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to establish what we refer to in the philosophy biz as a normative claim. Because, there's enough motherfuckers out there who are fucking telling you normative is just like a way that things should be done, right? And there's enough of these motherfuckers out there who are already trying to do that. And I don't want to be one. I don't seek to be one. If you ever find me becoming one, I hope you fucking pull me aside. If you show me a fucking shout out on social media and say, yo, fuck you, Isaac. You're becoming one of those normative assholes that you said you never wanted to become. You're sitting here and trying to fucking tell me how I should live my life. I thought you spent your whole fucking first 8-9 podcasts telling me that people that do this are fucking trying to fuck me or take my money, bro. What's up with that? Right? And now you're trying to turn it into one of them? Or maybe if you're like one of my jujitsu homies, you'll fucking choke my ass out and be like, look, bitch, that's what you get for fucking trying to become one of those normative establishing people and all that kind of shit, right? But what I am going to say is, yo, let's not fucking undersell the power of conversation, right? So when you're fucking trying to shut people down, you're shutting off a whole world of possibilities that these people, you even personally yourself, can engage in, right? And I'm telling you, even the most subtle movements can, throughout the course of a lifetime, can generate a fucking world of change, right? This is one thing that I try to instill on my students when we're doing our lectures on the process of becoming, specifically through the allegory of the cave, right? Which I'll be discussing in future episodes. But we have this fucking trajectory that we're all on, right? And if we follow that trajectory along the same straight and narrow as our family and our friends, and we never deviate from that fucking trajectory in the slightest way, and they never do the same either, then we're pretty much going to end up at the same fucking relatively the same ending point if none of our ideas and beliefs regarding one another change. But the second even the smallest fucking ideation occurs, whenever the slightest change, deviation and ideation occurs, right? Even that fucking small change, man, throughout the course of a lifetime fundamentally alters the trajectory of our lives, right? So much so that by the end of it, we may not even fucking recognize the people that we initially started with, and those who never deviated from their path. And by the time we get to the end of it, we may not even fucking recognize that person. We may not even fucking vibe with them. We're no longer riding the same way. We may not even fuck with them anymore, right? We'll talk all about this later in further episodes because, again, it's not the specific intention of this one. We got on this particular tangent by explicating, again, how this fucking Milhouse character, just through that fucking slight rhetorical move that I noticed, at least, maybe he's done it before, but to me, it meant a lot, right? Not from a personal fucking friendship level, but just to see that shit out there. He's got, a substantial little Instagram following. So a lot of people saw that too. And, those little ideas are starting to be slowly planted in many people, right? And it's all part and parcel then of the grand point that I wanted to talk about today, which is ultimately the indigenization process that we're all, not all, because not all of us are doing it, but it's really big right now in fucking academia for sure. It's fucking huge in my life, as I discussed in the previous lecture, and in the whole, foundation of hood philosophy, right? Now, the reason I wanted to talk about it at length a little bit more today was, again, it's because of the fucking burning of the Notre Dame Cathedral, bro, right? Now, there's no fucking way to sugarcoat this because this is a very polarizing topic. And obviously, given the nature of religion in general, it's understood why, right? But I'm just going to be fucking upfront and say, I don't fucking care, bro. I don't care that the fucking Notre Dame Cathedral burned. Not in the slightest way, shape, or form. I don't feel bad. The people who are coming along and saying that those of us who don't feel any sympathy for it are wretched individuals. No, dude, like, I don't fucking care. For one, I don't fucking care about much to begin with, right? Like, once you start fucking getting outside of my family, not people in general, but I'm saying instant, like, issues regarding life in general, that once they start to, like, leave my family, of things that don't directly affect my family, I really don't care, right? We can attribute that to the fucking nihilism, to the absurdism, whatever you so choose, to the fucking Nawat understanding of reality, the fleeting nature of, this dream life here on Tlacticpac, whatever you want to call it, bro. I don't fucking care though, right? Very few things that I fucking care about, okay? So just on that foundation alone, like, why the fuck should I care about the Notre Dame Cathedral any more than one should care, that I should care personally about the 3 cathedrals that were burned in St. Louis, for instance, the guy that was the fucking son of the sheriff in Louisiana, for instance, right? And also, fuck you, guy, whatever the fuck your name is, who burned those churches down. Not just because, you burned not just because they were the churches that you burned down, but more importantly, because you try to blame it on fucking black metal, bro. And that shit, now you crossed the line. I care about very few things, but obviously black metal is one of them, right? This whole shit is a fucking, it requires an understanding of the history of black metal in general. But I will, summarize it, I guess I can say, by suggesting that for those of you who are interested in seeing why, you watch the movie The Lords of Chaos, I don't know, some shit like that. It's a fucking movie about the band Mayhem, right? And it's a cool movie, and it's got its sappy ass points, but it gets the central gist of the history of the band Mayhem across. It's a really cool story. The singer, for those of you who aren't gonna watch the movie and want me to summarize it for you in short, right? The basic story goes like this. They had an original singer and guitar. They had an original whole band, right? But the singer and the guitarist, and then inevitably the bassist, became the most famous members for their own individual reasons why. The original singer, because he, like myself, was a fucking fellow sad boy, right? But unlike me, this fucking coward, right? Who, I say coward because of how terrifying death is, right? But this guy fucking was not afraid of death at all whatsoever. He was so unafraid of death that this motherfucker slit both his wrists, right? But since he was living in the cold, supposedly, it was so cold that after he slit his wrist, he fucking slit his throat, right? But it was so cold, allegedly, because he does like this Norway, like, it's in Norway and shit. And it was so cold that the blood like coagulated and it didn't fucking flow. So this motherfucker couldn't even succeed in fucking killing himself in the first place, right? At least in the way that he had initially hoped, by slicing his wrist. So that motherfucker went, got a shotgun, and blew his fucking head off, right? And then the guitarist comes along and he sees his homeboy, right? Fucking laid out with his fucking dome blown off. And he fucking goes down to the corner store and he buys a Polaroid and he comes back, takes a picture of homeboy. He organizes his shotgun and shit and he puts it right next to him. And he takes a picture of his boy with his fucking head blown off, right? And then on top of that, he fucking collects skull fragments, allegedly, right? The myth says that he ate pieces of his brain. I don't know if that's true or not. I wasn't fucking there, but allegedly what really did happen is he collected skull fragments and he put them on necklaces and he handed them out to his fellow homies that, in the black metal scene up in Norway. And then if that wasn't fucking gangster enough, this motherfucker turned around and put the picture that he took on that Polaroid on the cover of one of their albums, right? The band, again, is Mayhem. So if you want to see it, just type in Mayhem cover with fucking singer's head blown off, right? And you can see it for yourself, right? And then on another cover, by the way, for those of you who are wondering, like, what the fuck? How does this have anything to do, you tangential ass motherfucker, with everything that you've been talking about this whole time? Chill, bro. I'm getting there, right? On another cover, they had their first album, right? It's like some weird ass Latin name, Demystery something. I don't fucking know, right? Look it up. Mayhem. And this is all I do when I'm trying to listen to the album on YouTube, because they fucking took it off my streaming platform as soon as the movie came out, fucking coincidentally, right? Whenever I'm Googling it on YouTube, I just type in Mayhem, Misty, and then the rest comes up, right? You know how Google works. Anyways, the point that I'm trying to say is the fact that album right there, they put a picture of a church, right? And this particular church, what made it so famous is it was the church that the third person that I mentioned, the inevitable bassist in the band, Varg, right? Count something, I don't fucking know, right? I didn't get that deep into that shit. But this motherfucker burned that church down, dog. And not just that one, he burned multiple churches across fucking, I think like 3 at least, right? From what I recall off my terrible memory at the moment. This motherfucker burned, like he himself personally burned 3 churches, right? Not churches chickens, bro. Like these fucking historical fucking landmarks in, Norway that, were places of worship for people. So going back to this whole fuck you guy is because how dare you try to blame black metal, because now the fucking media is going to come along and be like, oh, we need to stop people from listening to black metal. And then people are like myself are going to be like, that's never going to happen. Why are we even having this conversation? Right? Anyways, the whole point then is that, because I should qualify this further by saying homeboy, the actual dude who burned the churches down, he's also got some problematic views. In fact, he served 20 years in prison, which is the maximum amount apparently for murder up in Norway, right? Because he actually wound up killing the guitarist that I just talked about earlier, the one that took a fucking picture of homeboy with his dome blown off, right? He fucking killed that dude and he stabbed him to death, right? And they have like different competing reasons why, right? The story gives one, the movie gives one narrative, but VAR gives another narrative, right? Anyways, besides the point, he himself, he has very, interesting, problematic, definitely some anti-Semitism views thrown in there, right? And I'm not trying to dismiss the anti-Semitism particularly, and I'm not even trying to fucking apologize for it. Let's get that much straight up out the fucking way, right? I'm not trying to dismiss his views, and I'm not trying to fucking apologize for it, right? Fucking anti-Semitism is fucked up, as it's as equally fucked up as, homophobia, racism, all that kind of shit, right? It's all fucked up. We've already established this in previous episodes, right? But I think what gets, at least for me, I could say this for sure for me, what got, again, I'm speaking on myself here, okay? Let me speak on myself to try to limit as much damage as I could potentially do with this fucking upcoming statement that I'm about to make. I personally, when I first read about this fucking story about all the church burnings back in like 2010, right? I assumed that it was nothing more than a publicity stunt, right? And the movie itself, Lords of Mayhem, whatever the fuck it's called, they play this angle a little bit, right? The whole angle being like, we are black metal, we are true Norwegian black metal, like, and we have to prove ourselves as such, right? And that's one narrative coming from the VAR camp, and the other narrative coming from this fucking the guitarist. His name was Euronymous, right? The Euronymous character is just basically, he's just trying to get famous. He's trying to get fucking famous, and he's doing whatever it takes to get famous, right? And when I first learned of this story, I was fucking convinced. I was like, yeah, dude, this is clearly a fucking publicity stunt, like, obviously. And it worked because it's fucking 2000 and, at this time, 2010. And I am fucking balls deep in the fucking library, in the library of this band Mayhem that I probably otherwise would have never heard of, It's fucking hard out there for a pimp, yo. It's hard in the music game in general. And there's music being made every single fucking day, new music all the damn time. And to make music that fucking lasts, it sticks around, it has an impact, it's fucking difficult to do, bro, right? And had it not been for these church burnings, I probably would have never heard Mayhem, right? But when I watched this movie, they played the other angle, and that was the angle of Varg, and this is where the whole anti-Semitism starts to come into play, right? People accuse him of anti-Semitism, and again, I don't fucking know the guy, so maybe he is an anti-Semite, right? But what I will say is that, as unfortunate as his views on Jewish people are, the reasoning that he gave behind it, honestly, bro, and I know a lot of people are not going to fucking like to hear this, especially in the academic circle that I occupy at a racist ass institution, UTEP, here in El Paso, right? We'll talk about that in fucking in future forthcoming posts, right? But for one, let me further qualify this. I'm trying to be fucking as politically correct as can be possible with the shit I'm talking about here personally. But I mentioned in a previous podcast how, you have brown people, let's just keep it simple, indigenous peoples, right? With this whole fucking indigenization process, that this is the whole point of this lecture, right? They speak about shit like it's blood and soil nativism, bro. Essentially, right? They say that because we the brown people of Anuak, Semanuak, Turtle Island, all sorts of different names for this one land, this continent here, right? North America, America, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Okay, that because we emanate from here, that this is our soil, our indigenous soil, that we have a right to be able to defend our ideologies and our epistemologies and our ontologies from this settler colonialism that invaded, with the arrival of Christopher Columbus. P.S. Fuck Christopher Columbus, right? And obviously, I fuck with that shit because this, yeah, dude, this is what I've been talking about. This is the foundation of hood philosophy, and specifically in the last lecture, in the last podcast, talking about how it's a complete rejection of these Western philosophies and this Western ontology and epistemology, right? So obviously, I fuck with that kind of shit, right? But this is where it gets really difficult for me, especially, is when you realize that when you start talking that shit, right? There's really no difference between that sort of blood and soil nativism than the kind of blood and soil nativism that we fucking accuse the fucking, these colonial European people of. It's the same shit, right? Where it gets a little problematic is when, you have the people who, are the descendants of the European colonizers here in America in 2019 talking that fucking blood and soil shit, because obviously they didn't originate here on Turtle Island, right? They came here. Well, their ancestors came here and then they were born here of their ancestors. So they can only trace their fucking lineage on this continent back to, 3, maybe 4 generations, right? But, again, even then, for one, fucking blood and soil nativism it's me personally, I think it's stupid. I think it's fucking ridiculous. I am a blood and soil nativist to the planet motherfucking Earth. What's up, right? I don't give a fuck what part of this planet I'm on, right? I identify with Gaia, Mother Earth, right? But going back to the whole Varg story, essentially what he's saying is that, well, Europe was his blood and soil, right? It is his ancestral home. This is where his ancestors fucking, for generation after generation, the same way that we here on Turtle Island, us detribalized and tribalized peoples here on Turtle Island, fucking lay our claim and our right to be on this continent based off of our fucking indigenous predecessors, the European people can do the same shit in Europe, right? So realistically, what Varg is doing is not different than what the fucking indigenous and tribalized and detribalized peoples here on Turtle Island are doing. And that is fucking asking for an indigenization of their epistemology, right? And this is where the whole fucking church burning shit comes into play, bro. What, at least the angle that was played in the movie, he was saying essentially is that Christianity, which this is where the anti-Semitism comes in, because obviously for those of you versed in the way Christianity works, it basically is all comes from the Torah and the Talmud, right? It's Jesus Christ was a Jewish person. The fucking Old Testament is the Bible for Jewish people, right? I forget specifically if it's the Torah or the Talmud, and I apologize. Please forgive my lack of my ignorance, right? But I know for a fact that the Old Testament is the same Bible, if you will, that the Jewish people, that's where they get their source of religion from, right? The only difference between the fucking the Christian religion and the Jewish religion is that the Christians essentially have a second part of the Bible, the New Testament, whatever that shit is called, right? Again, well, I'll just leave it at that, right? And then, they believe that Jesus was the Messiah, where Jewish people don't even feel as though he was anything more. This is the reading that I've gotten, right? Than just another Jewish person who was fighting the Romans and was persecuted because of it. Okay. So obviously the Jewish people, the nomadic tribe that inevitably came on to become, the Jewish people, they did not originate in fucking Europe, bro. And they fuck sure did not originate in here on Turtle Island. They came to Turtle Island by way of Europe, right? And this is what this Varg character was trying to say. He's like, dude, these fucking monuments, these churches, they have been built on the ashes of our ancestral religion, okay? They are replacing our understanding of reality, okay, with their version of reality, and that's fucked up. And this Varg character, man, like, love him, hate him, whatever the fuck, I don't care what your personal opinion is, right? We all have our own. But essentially what he was doing, it's an act of reclamation. It's a very violent act of reclamation, no doubt. I'm not fucking, again, apologizing it. I'm not apologizing for it. I don't fucking, whatever. Excuse me. 1 second. I hear dead air is the worst, but your boy needed a quick little coffee break, right? I'm not apologizing for it. I don't fucking, I don't fuck with that kind of shit, right? I'm a pacifist, bro. I'm a fucking pacifist. I don't think violence in any way is fucking cool, okay? However, if this fucking liberal agenda, if you will, in academia is correct, then it needs to be applied fucking universally, bro. And that means that, the same shit that we feel when we say like we're rejecting Christianity as indigenous peoples, that shit applies to people like Varg, bro, here in fucking Europe. Now, it might not be politically correct because, again, we've been fucking brainwashed to think that all white people are evil. Nah, man, like maybe some of them really are, but some Mexicans are too. Some fucking black people are evil too. Like, it's not an issue of fucking the color of your skin, bro. That's a human issue, right? But what I'm trying to say essentially then is this shit has to be extended universally, right? And just because you don't fucking agree with the views, if you will, of this Varg type character doesn't necessarily mean that that's a reason to fucking dismiss it, especially if you're trying to play the same card, right? And this ultimately then brings me to the whole point of this fucking podcast, bro. The indigenization movement in general and the fucking burning of the cathedral in Notre Dame. Again, I don't fucking care, right? Not even anymore for the fucking reason that I highlighted earlier. Again, what privileges the Notre Dame Cathedral over the fucking cathedrals in the churches in Louisiana, for one. They happen like a week apart from one another, right? But more importantly, seriously, man, just look at all the shit that is done in the name of Christianity, okay? Now, before I continue with this fucking rant that I'm about to go on, I'll qualify it by saying that Christianity, it does do some good, right? You see people, the Christian people helping people in the quote unquote less fortunate around the world in the local community. Like, okay, that's some good that they do, right? But also look at the shit that gets carried out in the name of Christianity, more importantly, right? In the name of religion in general, bro. I'm focusing here on Christianity specifically, right? But let's fuck with this idea that America is a Christian nation, for instance. Okay, America is a Christian nation. Let's just assume that really is the case, right? If America is a Christian nation, then that means that every time we, as the country of America, fucking drop a bomb on a country somewhere that's not America and destroy their churches, their temples, their holy sites of worship, their buildings, their architecture, that shit is by proxy being committed in the name of Christianity, right? They might not explicitly say so, but if this is a Christian nation, that's basically what's happening, right? And if that's the case, what makes the burning of the burning of a fucking Christian temple, like what happened at the Notre Dame Cathedral, any more significant than the burning of a Jewish fucking place of worship, of a Muslim place of worship, and for my specific tense, right, of an indigenous place of worship, bro? This whole country, the entire United States of America, right, as well as all the colonial project around the world that emanated from Europe, right? That shit is built on the ashes of fucking sacred sites of worship that were demolished, right? And one argument that people like to give is, well, that shit happened 500 years ago. Why don't you fucking get over it? First of all, fuck you. Second of all, why don't you get the fuck over the Notre Dame Cathedral burning? For one, it wasn't purposely set on fire from everything I'm gathering. For two, it happened 3 days ago, so get the fuck over it, right? And three, most importantly, just because, the burning of the fucking Templo Mayor down in Tenochtitlan, right, that happened 500 years ago, doesn't mean the same fucking practices aren't happening here today, right? Just look at this fucking pipeline that's being built through sacred indigenous lands. Just look at the eminent domain that the fucking United States government still uses to this day to fucking destroy, to take over the fucking land. It's happening still to this day. Indigenous land, right? Continuously under attack by the United States government. No one fucking bats an eye then, right? No one fucking bats an eye when we talk about how the, again, going back to the Templo Mayor was destroyed. That was a fucking holy site. That was a place of reverence. That was a place of worship. Why is it not how is that any different, right? And this is the whole point behind the indigenization movement. It's not to dismiss the fucking, that shit sucks. Like I said, I don't fuck with violence in any way, shape, or form. I don't condone violence, right? But there's no doubt that the fucking violence that was inflicted on by the Spanish on the Mexica you can't forget about that. You can't erase that. It happened, right? Most of our bodies here, the brown bodies here, especially those of us who are Chicano descent, right? Our bodies bear the fucking violence. We are products of rape, many of us, right? So it's we for one, we can't just fucking forget about this, right? For two, we have an epistemological violence that's taken place. The epistemology that I talked about in my previous podcast, where they fucking replaced our understanding of reality with a fucking Christian European understanding of reality. Like, that's violence, bro. That is fucking subliminal, tacit violence. That is just as violent as them burning our sacred fucking temples, right? So why should I care? Tell me again, why should I care about the fucking Notre Dame Cathedral burning if these motherfuckers don't even care about the shit that, the Spaniards did here on Turtle Island? The president of Mexico recently, for instance, asked for an apology for specifically the Vatican, but also I believe the president of Spain for those actions. And people fucking mocked him, dude. They were like, oh God, can this guy get over it already? Can he fucking move on? History's over. You fucking lost. You're the losers, etc. Right? Dude, that's not the fucking point. The point is, if you want me to respect your fucking holy sites of worship, you need to return the fucking favor. It's not a fucking one-way street, bro. This shit works both ways, right? And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. I have yet to hear an apology from the Pope. I've yet to hear a fucking apology from the King of Spain. So I'm not going to sit here and try to be petty and say, well, until that happens, I refuse to feel sorry for the cathedral in Notre Dame, because for one, that would be very unbecoming of me. Because again, that would imply that I fucking care in the first place. And I'm not saying that I don't care so much as it's like, who cares? At the end of the day, fucking sun's going to explode, fucking taking any trace of humanity with it. The Mexica, the fucking Spaniards, all that kind of shit's going to be gone. No one fucking cares anyways, right? That's part of it. But more importantly is because, you know what, dude, I'm not going to hold on to the grudge so much as I'm going to hold on to the fucking the memory. And the memory is what propels me to continue this whole fucking indigenization process, to say, yo, basically my whole fucking life I've been brainwashed to believe the world was one way, and it's not. And now I am trying to desocialize, deprogram myself from what I was brainwashed with, and hopefully try to re-socialize myself with a completely different fucking view of the world. Namely, one that is more relevant, that is more fucking, that is more impactful, that is more, in tune with who I am as a person and in my life, right? So to circle all the way back around, this is just this was the fucking long-winded way of saying why seeing the fucking Aztec warrior on Mil Perp's fucking Instagram story was so meaningful to me, right? Because again, it's these seeds that we sow, little fucking seeds that we sow through conversation that inevitably could potentially have a huge and lasting impact on the lives of everybody. I know for sure I can say that my conversations with Milhouse, especially an ability to gain a more nuanced understanding of ideation, the thought process, if you will, of somebody who is a conservative, has definitely influenced my life. Certainly changed it, right? Maybe not in the most drastic form. I'm not going to fucking go out and vote for Trump in 2020, right? But it's changed it enough to be able to say, unlike before, where I would just be like, man, the fuck? Somebody who's right-wing, what are they, fucking stupid? They don't understand? Like, dude, if you would have caught me at 18, that's what I would have probably said, because I was a fucking shithead, as I discussed in the previous podcast, right? I'm still a shithead, but definitely not as ignorant. We're at 32 now, where I'm at. I would look at someone from the right wing and be like, damn, I could fucking understand why you'd be right wing. And those views that you hold, for the most part, shit, I understand those shits completely. I may not want to put my energy behind, fucking furthering them, but I can understand where you're coming from. And I appreciate that shit. And even though we don't fucking agree, I'm not going to seek to fucking, change your views. I'm not going to seek to fucking guilt you for your views, because why? Who the fuck cares? First and foremost, sun's going to explode. Secondly, because I ain't no weak bitch slave, right? And all that we're going to get to in our forthcoming podcast. You'll get to as well, I guess, if you're fucking coming along for the ride with me, this whole weak bitch slave shit. But I will qualify it by saying that it has to do with Nietzsche and his views on religion and how it's the fucking, the slavery, the master slave dialect, I should say, right? That's where all that emanates from. But for today, I guess I did want to keep this podcast kind of short, and we're at about, not really that far into it, but, close enough where I can comfortably put it to an end by saying that, this indigenization movement, man, it's slowly but surely taking hold in this country, on this fucking continent. And, for those of you who saw my post recently about the whole church, if you thought the burning of the Notre Dame Cathedral was a tragedy, just wait, right? Maybe you follow some of the fucking hashtags, right? And that was kind of the whole purpose behind this podcast, was to explain even further, because not only of the importance that the indigenization process holds in the hood philosophy movement, right? But also to try to further the educational process of exactly what these hashtags are, right? So when you hear, or when you see, for instance, myself or other people tag shit like indigenize, all we're saying is, dude, fucking understand that we were lied to. We have been lied to by our educational learning facilities. And they've told us that the world can only be one way, but it can't. Okay. And as I discussed in the previous podcast, but I guess to wrap it up, to bring it back, because I said I was going to talk about it later and I haven't really, and I'm not going to, right? The whole sad boy shit. It can help. It can help the slightest bit, right? Even if it just helps you see the world slightly different, and it produces a little bit happiness on your behalf to do so. That alone is worth it, right? But more importantly, it's worth it because you start to realize how much of this game that we're all playing, I guess you could call it capitalism in America, right? 2019 is predicated off of this Eurocentric understanding of reality. And once you indigenize your epistemology, you start to truly understand how fucked up things, for instance, like immigration reform currently are. Now, I'm not going to fucking sit here and be that person that openly advocates for fucking just random ass open borders. Not because I don't think that that's the solution, but because I don't fucking know. I don't know, and I'm nowhere fucking near educated enough to be making such a statement, right? This is a relatively recent fucking admittment on my behalf, right? If you would have caught me 3 years ago, right, I would have been like, man, what the fuck? We should have open borders and all people should be legalized in this country. But bro, that's just the liberal, extreme liberal fucking understanding. There is a fucking opposite to that spectrum, right? And realistically, the truth to that is probably somewhere in the middle, right? Now, all the fucking people who are like, indigenize now, I thought you were down for the hood, Isaac, what the fuck? You're one of those sellout Theo tacos. Maybe, bro, right? Because in their eyes, I'm fucking doing a disservice and I'm fucking trying to apologize for shit like the Border Patrol and, all that. No, dude. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. Those of you all who fucking recently saw the news about the people being fucking penned up here under the bridge in fucking El Paso, Texas. Like, dude, that shit is fucked up, right? Border Patrol agents shooting into Mexico and fucking killing innocent people. That shit is fucked up, right? The obvious response would be like, they're not innocent, bro. They're trying to enter the country legally. Fuck you, dude. Like, they're just people, bro. Right? You don't need to fucking shoot a little girl in the head, for instance, because she's trying to fucking come into your country. That's what we have a whole fucking system of laws for that could have probably taken care of it, right? So when we say indigenize, all we're simply saying is that the only reason you're justifying, for instance, the shooting of this little girl is because you personally have been brainwashed to think that this fucking country is, all whatever it is that you think about this country, right? Especially if you hold these beliefs. You've been, unless you personally have taken the time to critically examine your fucking beliefs, to examine your religion, to examine your fucking patriotism, to examine everything about your reality, essentially, right? Unless you've done that and then still circled all the way back around and said, nope, this is what I believe. Your fucking opinion is irrelevant, man, because the shit is you just got lucky. And you were born here, and because of that, you have these beliefs. And had you been born anywhere else, you would have had their fucking beliefs and probably felt a complete different way, right? So when we say indigenize, it's basically what all we're saying in the first part. We're saying, yo, let's work to undo this fucking brainwashing that we've done, this Eurocentric brainwashing that we've all undertaken, because realistically, it's really not in a lot of our favors, especially those of you who have families that have been violently fucking separated from one another here at the border, right? And when we say decolonize, we're asking you to fucking change that shit, dude. Like, dude, for one, you understand that the only reason the majority of the people here in El Paso, I've mentioned this before, but it fucking bears repeating, are Americans, is because that fucking arbitrary line that we call the border was built 5 minutes this way instead of that way. Because if it had been built just 5 minutes north, fucking an hour north, almost everybody here would be a fucking Mexican citizen, right? And in which case, going back to the whole indigenized process, you fucking would have been socialized in the fucking whatever brainwashing the Mexican people are going through their education systems, right? And you felt a complete different way, right? But since you were born here, you were obviously in a position where you start to realize through our Eurocentric brainwashing that we've undertaken and having undertaken this indigenization process, that the next inevitable step is to decolonize and start to realize shit that we believe and how unjust it is and how unfair in the interest it is of many people. Again, especially those of us who have families here on the border, when we realize, dude, we're being separated by nothing more than a fucking arbitrary line on the border. We're putting people in not even fucking jail anymore. We're locking them up like fucking animals underneath of a bridge because of this fucking colonial law. And that shit, I mean, dude, again, I don't give a fuck. Citizen of Earth, all that kind of shit. I identify as the fucking infinite and immortal universe expressing itself in fucking the English language, to quote Joe Rogan, right? That shit does not mean anything to me, bro. What side of the fucking fence you were built on? What I do know is that you can't fucking treat people like that, right? And unless we decolonize our minds, we're never going to be able to understand why we can't treat people like that, because the colonization has us believing that the reason we can treat people like that is simply because they're not American, right? So if they're not American, well, who the fuck cares, right? No, dude, like that's not how that shit works. Oh, because they're not Christian, because they're not whatever. Like you can treat them however you want because they don't abide by the universal norm that we're attempting to establish. Like, no, dude, that's not right. That's part of the colonization process, and we must work to undo that in order to get to a deeper, better understanding that'll hopefully get us to realize our shared essence as human beings, right? That's my fucking soapbox. Allow me to come back down off of it and speak briefly about another fucking hashtag. Just briefly, because this is about getting to the 50-minute mark. I said I was going to end this shit like fucking 7 minutes ago, and I kept going. I apologize for those of you who were fucking nervously anticipating the end. But I will say that if it's the case for you, you should have fucking never listened to this in the first place or turned it off whenever the fuck, right? Anyways, the whole Aztlán hashtag, right? Aztlán is a very interesting topic, right? I'm reaching for a book here for those of you watching the video, or for those of you who slowly hear my voice getting further away, right, from the microphone. I'm reaching for a book, and the book is called Creating Aztlán. It's by a gentleman scholar named Dylan Miner, okay? And it's a great fucking book, man. Aztlán essentially is what we refer to in the Chicanx circle as the indigenous, the mythological, for some, homeland of the Mexica people, the Nahuatl people, right? And it extended it went as far north as Northern California, and it extended as eastward as Wyoming, Colorado, and Oklahoma, and then all the way down to Texas, and then poof, obviously, of course, down to Mexico and shit, right? And Aztlán, it's so the basic, all those little states, American states in between then, right? So the idea then is, at least for the people who fuck with this idea of Aztlán, like myself, not myself specifically, and I'll get into why specific. Notice how quickly I reacted to that is because Aztlán, I'm telling you, Aztlán is a very problematic idea, and I'll tell you why here shortly, right? But for the people who fuck with this idea of Aztlán, they're basically saying then that anybody who was fucking born in that specific region, namely here, the American Southwest now, they're fucking indigenous to this area, the whole blood and soil nativism, right? So their basic argument is that, you know, you can't be, no person is illegal on stolen lands, for instance. We didn't cross the border crossed us, right? I am fucking indigenous to this continent. How can and you can't criminalize indigenous bodies, all that kind of shit. When you hear that rhetoric, I'm not saying shit as in trying to dismiss it, but just shit as in, you know, common parlance. Whenever you hear that, those words being used, that's basically the idea that they're fucking with, right? Now, the reason Aztlán is so problematic is because, listen, this is just so obvious. I can't believe that I even have to say it. But dude, again, going back to the whole shared essence as humanity, the European people who came here and colonized the Turtle Island, they did not do anything that the fucking indigenous peoples here on Turtle Island were already doing to each other long before the fucking European people got here, okay? And the Mexica were no exception, bro. The Mexica, the people that the majority of us identify with, right? Because we've lost all cultural connection, and we assume that, you know, every Mexican is just part of the Aztec lineage, right? There's so many more, and this is why it's problematic, but we'll get into that here shortly, right? So many more indigenous tribes of Mexico, right? But we're speaking here specifically of the Mexica because these motherfuckers were the original colonists. They were the original colonizers, right? There were so many fucking indigenous tribes, indigenous peoples here on Turtle Island And when you say the word Aslan, you just kind of blanket over it and assume that they were all Mexican, for instance, or that they were all indigenous. And that's not the fucking case, bro. The fucking Turtle Island, it was a highly diverse area, right? And there was peoples there living there, a lot of them still here to this day, right? Who weren't Mexicas, who weren't Mexican, and who had their own cultures and their own epistemologies and their own ontologies completely different from those of their Mexica colonizers, right? So when we say Aztlán, that's why it's so problematic, because you just fucking erase the identity of all those people. And if we're doing that, then again, what the fuck makes us any different from the people that we're complaining, namely the European colonists and all that kind of shit, right? So yeah, I fuck with the idea of Aztlán, but I fuck with it more now in this Dylan Miner sense of the term, because I've realized how problematic it is. But what this Dylan Miner is essentially saying is that Aztlán is almost, it's like a birthplace, it's a portal, it's a fucking state of mind, if you will, right? Where the Chicanx person is born, and you start to realize that we have a fucking rich cultural, epistemological, ontological lineage that is not grounded in this Eurocentric narrative. And if we undertake the indigenization process through this portal of Aztlán, we can be reborn as a Chicanx person, right? And when we say Chicanx, now you notice the subtle distinctions. I'm saying Chicanx and Chicanx, right? The difference is in basically the first letter, the first two letters in the Chicanx form, CH, and Chicanx, the X, right? Chicanx, this shit, again, it itself is problematic, but I'm not going to fucking talk about it because now I'm really getting close to the hour. But it has its own complicated history, right? Namely, in the sense, I'll just explain it quickly. These fucking the original Chicano movements, they're just annoying, dude. Like, they complain about all this shit that the European oppressors supposedly were doing to them, and they turned around and did the same fucking shit to the people in the Chicanx movement. Namely, they made it all about men, and they fucking shit on gay people, for instance, and they said that anyone who wasn't a Chicano was fucking whatever, right? I don't fuck with that kind of shit, and neither does this Dylan Miner character, right? And thus the move to a Chicanx with an X, right? For one, the Chicanx is more inclusive to all peoples, irrespective of their fucking genetic makeup, right? Meaning, if you are from Japan, meaning if you are from fucking Chile or Peru, right? If you fuck with this indigenization process and you are interested in the fucking Nahuatl understanding, the Mexica understanding of reality, you can be fucking reborn a Chicanx, bro, of the X with the more inclusive person. And once you do so, this fucking world of opportunity opens up in such a way where a fucking whole universe that you never knew existed magically appears before our eyes, and we see it expressed through art, through culture, through politics, through all sorts of shit, right? So, yeah, just to reiterate, I mean, yeah, I guess it's sad. The architecture was nice from what I hear. I never fucking went. All you motherfuckers out there weird flexing, posting your pictures of going to the fucking, being in Paris and shit. Hey man, do your thing, right? I ain't hating, right? It's a weird flex, but I ain't hating. I get it. It was beautiful fucking architecture, but so were our indigenous temples, bro. Like, for reals. And until you fucking acknowledge that fact, then this whole indigenization process is not complete, and it needs to continue going, because only then will the people who fucking don't even know, or those who do know who don't fucking care, to, you know, make the equivalence and maybe understand why we're so fucking hurt when our sacred temples got burned, but we're not hurt when their sacred temples got burnt. Maybe in understanding the reason I'm not hurt, again, because for one, don't fucking care. For two, like, dude, how do you expect me to care if you can't even acknowledge my fucking suffering, my pain about our indigenous sacred temples being burned? And until you do, you obviously don't see me as fucking worthy of, you know, consideration, let alone possibly then as an equal, in which case I'll say, well then no, I don't fucking care about your temple being burnt either, right? Very, very highly problematic podcast, I'm sure, but that's only because, unfortunately, the indigenization process has yet to fully take hold here on Turtle Island, and it's going to, much of what I said, go against the beliefs that most of us have been, you know, fucking unfortunately brainwashed to believe are correct. It's a small sacrifice, but, you know, not too bad of a sacrifice compared to what other people are, you know, doing to advance this cause throughout the world, right? So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this bad boy up here. I will leave you as I do with all my other podcasts, and hope that you enjoyed it, right? And yeah, if you didn't, I'm not gonna tell you to go fuck yourself anymore, right? But I will say, hey, let me know why, because like the whole conversation with Millhouse from that I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast goes, maybe I can work, maybe you can work at getting a better understanding as to why it is that you didn't fuck with it, right? So until then, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.